When you go through these difficult situations, especially with unforgiveness, if people have hurt you, you're either going to come out bitter or better. You can use that situation to make you bitter in life, or the Lord is going to use it to make you better and stronger. At the end of the day, this is what we know. Jesus said we must forgive. This is not an option. It's not a suggestion. Jesus is saying you must forgive. And so there's this question that I want to grapple with today, and I actually hope it messes with you for years to come, because I think it's a good question. It's this: have I forgiven others to the extent I have been forgiven? Not just a little bit, not most of the way. Have I been forgiven to the extent I have been forgiven? This is one of our maturing attributes that we're going through this series. And if I believe that I've been forgiven of all of my sins, then I need to measure that against how I have forgiven other people. Because I believe if I am holding sins against people, I will not reach the potential that God has for my life. And I believe the same for you as well. And so I want to get real practical with the definition of forgiveness here, and then kind of break it down a little bit. Forgiveness is this. Forgiveness is the act of pardoning an offense by releasing resentment and the right to seek revenge, modeled after God's forgiveness toward us through Christ. So it has really a few different steps here. The first is this: I am pardoning an offense. That word pardoning would mean acquitting somebody or setting that offense aside. One part of the definition I really like is this, is putting it behind you so you're not looking at it anymore, okay? So when you're forgiving somebody, you are pardoning the offense that they committed against you, or multiple offenses, by putting it behind you. You're giving it to Jesus and setting it aside. You're also releasing two things. You're releasing resentment from your heart, and you're releasing your right to seek revenge. Now, you might think, well, I don't really seek revenge on somebody. I'm not the one that wants to punish somebody. If you're holding unforgiveness in your heart, then you are secretly hoping that somebody gets what they deserve, whether you're the one pouring it out on them or not. It's just the way our soul works. Unforgiveness means this: I have resentment towards you, so now I am going to not pardon you. I'm going to hold that thing against you, and I want you to get revenge. Sometimes it comes out in our prayers. Sometimes it comes out in what we are secretly hoping for. Sometimes it comes out as we're scrolling social media. And when we stop on them, we're secretly hoping they're not doing well. It's kind of embarrassing to admit, isn't it? That's what unforgiveness will do. It'll create this bitterness and this resentment. And so our maturity mark statement for today is this: is we want to live a lifestyle of ongoing forgiveness to others, to stay free from bitterness. Now, the reason why I use bitterness here, resentment is used in the definition of forgiveness, is bitterness is built up resentment over time that is left unresolved, okay? So resentment starts, and if you are resentful toward multiple people or one person over and over and over again, bitterness comes. So I was explaining to my mom, I usually try to call her if I'm going to use an illustration about my life whenever I lived at home, and if I'm going to use an illustration with my kids, I get their permission beforehand. So my mom and I were unpacking a little bit of what happened in that church when I was in college, and the pastor who spent time in prison, and just, what we went through. But she reminded me of a statement that she would have told us years ago. And she said, when you go through these difficult situations, especially with unforgiveness, if people have hurt you, you're either going to come out bitter or better. Right? Isn't that true? You can use that situation to make you bitter in life, or the Lord is going to use it to make you better and stronger. And so this bitterness, we want to guard our heart toward bitterness. So I just want to read to you what bitterness is. This is a deep-seated resentment that is left unaddressed. It acts like a hidden root that can grow and produce things like anger, envy, more unforgiveness, and it usually stems from experiences of disappointment, injustice, or pain that hasn't been dealt with. And so anywhere in your life that you have an unresolved conflict with another person, I suggest you go to the Lord and make sure you are not operating in unforgiveness toward them. all right? Now, unresolved could mean you guys have just never met to work it out, right? You may have built your side of the bridge and you're at peace, but it's still unresolved. That's not on you anymore. But any unresolved conflict that you are not trying to resolve in peace can absolutely lead to unforgiveness. And so, like I said before, if it's not dealt with, I believe it limits the fulfillment that you have in life. I believe it limits the purposes of God in your life. I believe it can bring you into bondage where you just become a grumbling, complaining, miserable person. And those people aren't fun to be around, right? And so we want to be joy-filled because that's who Jesus was, the most joy-filled person on this earth. And so in Hebrews 12:15, it says this, look after each other. So we're supposed to help one another so that none of you fails to receive the grace of God. It's interesting because at first I would say, okay, I've been hurt. I've been sinned against. I want the grace of God to come upon my life. We have to understand this too. Grace goes toward the person who has hurt you as well. God's grace is limitless. And if they're seeking that unforgiveness, or if they're seeking forgiveness for that reason, then God will give it to them as well. It says, watch out that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to trouble you, corrupting many. And so when bitterness takes root, it will corrupt our soul and it will also corrupt the people around you. And so I believe that we can live to a higher standard. We can encourage one another. When you know there's unresolved conflict in somebody else's life, we can say, hey, let's talk to the person. Let's resolve this thing. Let's make sure you're not bringing judgment in your heart toward those people. And so we're going to camp out in Matthew chapter 18 for a while. We'll get to a few other verses. But if you want to turn your Bible there, I'm going to read out of the New Living Translation. I'm going to summarize some things as well. But if you have your hard copy Bible or your digital Bible, maybe you'll highlight some things along the way, something that might really spark some interest from the Holy Spirit to you. So we have Peter engaging with Jesus here in these first two verses, and then Peter tells a parable right after it. In Matthew 18, verse 21, it says, then Peter came to him, who's Jesus, and asked this, Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times? Jesus says, no, not 7 times. But 70 times 7. All right, so what's happening here? If you don't know the context, you might think like Peter's just like picking this random number. Well, in rabbinical teaching in those days, forgiveness was required 3 times. And they pulled that out of an Old Testament verse that they would have known, but it's out of context. And so the rabbis would have taught them as a young buck growing up, somebody sins against you once, forgive them. If they sin against you twice, forgive them. 3 times, forgive them. 4th time, you can just call judgment upon them. All right? So picture Peter now. Peter's like, watch this, Jesus. He's probably like, apostles, watch this one. I'm not just going to double it. I'm going to double it and add one. Number 7. It's a perfect number in the Bible. So he goes to Jesus. He's like, how many times should we forgive? Now, he might feel like he was being generous by saying 7 times. I literally think this is not in the Bible. It's my own interpretation. I feel like somebody ticked him off the week before, and he forgave them once, twice, 3 times. He was feeling really good, so 4 times. And he's like, hold up. I need a limit from Jesus. Like, I need the maximum. I'm going to him with 7. Maybe he'll say 6, and this guy is going to get what he deserves. Again, not in the Bible. I know Peter's personality, so I'm just figuring maybe that's what he was doing. So Jesus tests his heart, and he does what only Jesus could do. He blows his mind with his answer. And he's like, no, not 7 times. 70 times 7. Now, those of you who are good at math are like, wow, 490, that's a lot of times. Listen, in the way they spoke to each other in that culture, Jesus is not saying, on sin number 491, get a hammer and chase the guy. He's saying this, keep on forgiving. Keep on forgiving. Live a lifestyle of forgiveness over and over and over and over and over again. Peter thought he was getting away with something, but Jesus said you have to keep on forgiving. Now, this is what I want you to see is Jesus didn't qualify the sin. I would have liked it if somebody said, like, okay, you can forgive the person, like the middle schooler who lied to you and maybe gossiped about you, but the one who threatened to beat you up day after day, you don't have to forgive him. Jesus did not qualify lower levels and higher levels of sin. He just said, you have to forgive 490 times. Now listen to me. Somebody that has sinned against you and that is harmful towards you, the Lord does not want you to be hurt and abused, okay? So there's something called boundaries where you can say, for as long as you're treating me like this, I'm not going to interact with you, all right? I do want to pause here because there are people in this room that have been hurt beyond things that we could probably even imagine, like pain so deep or abuse so deep that you've never even talked to anybody else about it. And so a message like this can make you nervous because you're saying, I don't know how you could ever ask me to release what this person has done from me or, from me because of the pain. So I want you to understand there are boundaries, there is safety that the Lord wants to put around you. You've already felt the pain of the offense. Jesus doesn't want you to live in the pain of unforgiveness. Okay, the person who has hurt you probably does not even know that you are holding unforgiveness toward them. So Jesus knows you've been hurt once, now you're going to be hurt again if you're holding unforgiveness because it poisons your soul, not the soul of the other person. And so we need to grapple with this thing. We need to be asking ourselves, have I forgiven others to the extent that I have been forgiven, even if the pain doesn't go away, even if my soul is still wounded, even if I'm still processing that experience? Have I released them? Have I pardoned that offense? Have I released resentment and released my need to have revenge on them?